Hey, what's up, everybody? I really plan on doing a lot more consistent videos. Even missed a podcast this weekend, but Adam and I will be back. We'll be back Sunday or Monday or something. So I wanted to do a quick video that was triggered. Well, it's something I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about the Boogaloo movement. Civil War to Electric Boogaloo. Um, and I've been, you know, really doubtful it just seems like it's something that is barely more than a meme. Um, and it's being portrayed almost as if it's like the foil to Antifa. It's like the right's answer to Antifa or something. But of course, far, far worse. So a friend of mine, again, one of my really intelligent idiot friends, shares uh, an article. Whoops. Let me pull this article up here. So he shares this article, and let me switch. Sorry, it's been a little while. Accused killer of California cops was associated with the right wing Boogaloo movement, and he added a comment for everyone desperately trying to blame Antifa or BLM for violence or quote unquote riots. So this this single post and that comment is his proof that somehow um, Antifa and Black Lives Matter supporters have not been doing violence, and the riots in quotes is pretty clearly seems to be that he's completely denying the existence of riots. So um, it's obviously nonsense. And I don't know what to. Adam and I were talking about it last episode, I think, about people that are intelligent in other areas of their lives, and how you know I mean something this silly. You know if we're having some debate at work right now about some technology and whether or not we should keep using it, or you know um, we should sort of choose a different direction altogether, and different people have different experiences. And you know nobody is nobody is claiming that their one experience is the rule. There's an effort to sort of collect um, different experiences with it. There's an effort to kind of go more to fundamental principles, to argue, this is really the way to do it, and possibly people had misused the technology, didn't really understand what it was for, used it in a way that it's not really meant to, but it doesn't. Why, it's not a argument to get rid of it. Yada yada yada. Anyway, and then in this, you know, realm, and I would imagine that this guy would behave pretty similarly. I mean, just in my experience with him over the years, haven't seen him in a while. He moved out west. I believe, actually, I think he might even be in Portland. Um, and then just something as silly as this, to think that this one thing uh, sort of makes the whole case. No attempt at even some statistics or anything. And I don't know how you get there. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing my this was a Christmas present. This is a Hawaiian shirt, Christmas parrots, and I got a little tactical gear on for my Boogaloo look. Uh, Anyway, I honestly feel like this is as much as anybody. This is as much in the Boogaloo movement as you can possibly be. I don't think that there's much more to it than that. Um, if I went out in public like this, I mean that's it. It's totally official. I am in this. I'm in this, right wing extremist movement because I have a Hawaiian shirt under tactical stuff, and you know, again, right? Like, uh, if well, I don't say again, but if you are trying to look like a certain thing that has, let's say, for instance, the black bloc look, all black, mask, everything the Antifa goes and does. If you have two straight nights of violence with where there's all this video of people dressed like that, and then the third night, you're dressed like that and you're out in the town and police, grab you or suspicious or whatever, or people don't treat you cool. I mean, I get that. I'm not saying that you deserve to get beat up or whatever, but you know, um, people got to make snap decisions, and if they see you walking on their property and you look like the people that have done all this violence or dressed like them, this is a conscious thing, right? You're not born with head to toe black clothing on. So I get that if there really was some movement that then wearing this Hawaiian shirt under tactical gear, carrying an AR, okay, yeah, it would make you, I mean, you're not probably accidentally stumbling into that look, so you probably picked it for a reason. But my main point or my feeling about this is there is not any semblance of a movement, and particularly not like nothing remotely on par with Antifa. Um, uh, I mean, they've been active for years and years, and I don't know if they have much of a connection back to the anti-fascists in Germany. I mean, I know they claim that. I mean, I guess they're just Marxists, really. I I do think it's interesting that they identify themselves about what they oppose, and this is something. So, anarchist is one way that I think I could describe myself. Anarcho-capitalist, another way, probably a little bit more specific, more accurate. Anarchist, obviously troublesome because you have to have the follow up. Are you a libertarian anarchist or are you a communist, anarchist? The ancoms, and so while I do say that, I do use the term anarchist sometimes. I'm really trying to remove it from the way I describe myself because I just I think it's confusing. What's the point of being confusing? And also, anarchy is sort of also defining yourself by the negative as well. Um, and then there's libertarian, which is fine. Just for me, they're particularly recently, and I mean probably yeah, I don't know. I mean, the first libertarian I voted for, um, the guy before Gary Johnson, I can't even remember, but he was another guy that was a neocon sort of turned libertarian. Before that, I never voted, never even thought about it really. Um, and then you had Gary Johnson, now Jo Jorgensen herself, I would say, is an improvement over Gary Johnson, but the Libertarian Party is pretty whack right now. At least, it, I mean, it's important what they put out on Twitter, and it's a joke, right now. So I have a tough time identifying myself or I guess I'm a kind of lukewarm on the libertarian term. But what I always felt, ever since I really learned about it, is voluntarist, and I think that that is, that's the way to go for me. And I like that because I'm identifying myself by the positive. So I'm kind of in control of that. I'm saying, hey, this is what I believe in. I believe that voluntary interactions between consenting people should be allowed, full stop. There's no rules on that, as long as well, and then I make a rule, as long as you're not infringing on the property rights of, or the damaging the property or aggressing against someone else. I mean, it's pretty simple, and I think from that, from the non-aggression principle, you can almost formulate, all the laws you need. I mean, pretty much can. I think it just comes down to just kind of parsing through that, and I think you could still set legal precedent and stuff around that to sort of help navigate, but for the most part, yeah, all these, thousands and thousands and probably millions of pages of legislation that our federal government has put into law, um, really is either just reinforcing property rights, which is rare, or it's violating property rights in some way. It's giving a special privilege to some person or a group of people to violate the property rights of another group of people. So most of the legislation is whack, as that they're coming out with. So, but yeah, so the sort of anti-fascists are interesting because what I would say that a equally, dare I say, more accurate term for Antifa is communist, right? Like, or Marxist. I mean, whatever, pick your flavor, but that's what they are. And so, when they say that they're anti-fascist, and I'll show you some stuff that's interesting. I found a couple videos from sort of the major news outlets treating both Boogaloo and Antifa. Found it interesting, and they talk about that. Antifa is anybody that is anti-fascist, but you know, but it's through their crazy communist lens that unless you are a communist, you're a fascist, essentially. I mean, that I don't know of anything outside of that. Um, so anyway, I mean, it's a group. It's communist, right? And it's a bunch of communist groups all around the country. Communism's been around a long time, and they're, I don't know, getting, they're growing in numbers and getting more violent. Uh, and it just doesn't, the Boogaloo movement or whatever, it doesn't compare at all. There's no there. It's just a joke. I mean, how many times have I referred to the second thing over the years of my life as to Electric Boogaloo? I mean, this is just somebody one time said it, and it stuck with the saying like a second Civil War. Oh, Civil War II, Electric Boogaloo. I mean, it's just a joke. There's no, there's just no underlying philosophy, and the people. I don't know. Maybe I mean, the people in these militias, I mean, they've been in these militias and they've been prepping for this kind of thing for sure. Uh, but it's not something different. I mean, there are militias that are right, whatever, libertarian and right, leaning folks populate almost all of them, as far as I know. And I think some of them are wearing Hawaiian shirts now. And I don't think any other, like, in any other way has this changed anything. Um, so, and I tend to tread pretty lightly on the conspiracy side of this stuff, but I mean, how many times do we have to see major news outlets sort of creating the story that they want? And I mean, this video, there's a dozen guys wearing this gear and Hawaiian shirts. I mean, it doesn't. It's just nothing. I mean, there's just not armies of these people. I mean, I don't know how many Antifa people are out there, but I I think probably way more than are wearing Hawaiian shirts, and certainly doing way more damage, way more violence. So anyway, so here's this article that my dummy friend shared. Accused killer of California cops was associated with the right-wing Boogaloo movement. The FBI announced. So mainly, what I'm sort of pointing at is just like let's just sort of go through all this and kind of follow it along and see, um, you just see how it gets treated, versus Antifa. The FBI announced Tuesday that Stephen Carrillo, the U.S. Air Force sergeant who allegedly murdered law enforcement officers in California during protests earlier this month, was associated, and this is some link to a big stream of Twitter posts, not his own, just something else. Basically, they're just linking to somebody else who claims that he was associated with the right-wing Boogaloo movement, right? So, and I mean, right here, I have a lot of trouble because when there's when there like, I guess you could say, used symbolism or something. Well, wait do you even see how they connected to him. But I mean, again, they're I mean, prove me wrong in the comments, but I mean, I just don't think that there's this separate movement that's rising up. You're telling me that there's militias, and then there's this new thing called the Boogaloo movement that is not just militia guys that were already militia guys now wearing, Hawaiian shirts. Like, I've been a libertarian for a long time now. Am I now in the Boogaloo movement because I'm wearing this Hawaiian shirt? It's pretty weak connection there. And yeah, there's just not a lot going on to really to like go much deeper. So Carrillo chose the timing of his attacks to quote unquote take advantage of a time when the nation was mourning the killing of George Floyd. So I'm not really sure what that means, like how he's taking advantage of that. But and here are the key facts. Last week, Carrillo was charged with murder. Oh, it's actually kind of interesting. This guy is pretty wild. So I guess what they did was so he was charged with the murder after he ambushed sheriff deputies and threw pipe bombs at police on July 6th. He killed another cop when they tried to apprehend him. And so he killed that. I guess that was a federal officer. Yeah, they don't even say his name. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Oh, it'll say it here. So, oh, yeah. This was. So here's a good one. Um, Before he was apprehended, Korea reportedly scrawled the word Boog, and I became unreasonable in blood on the hood of his car. Boog is short for Boogaloo, which, according to NBC News, is far right anti government movement that began on the extremist site 4chan and aims to start a second American Civil War. So, basically, in the whatever is the worst possible formulation of this, are there people that use this meme that would like to see a second Civil War? Sure, I'm sure there are. Right? There's 300 million people in the world. And this is the problem. This is the problem with citing something like this and saying this is proof of some big organized militia or movement or whatever, or my dumbass friend saying this somehow proves that Antifa hasn't done anything, hasn't been committing violence. The Black Lives Matter protests haven't been turning into riots at night, hundreds and hundreds of times at this point, right? I mean, that the first week or weekend, I mean, it was literally, I think, in like hundreds of cities there were riots. I mean, in my entire life, I've never seen anything even remotely close to that. The LA riots around the Rodney King trial and everything was the worst that I'd ever saw, and I was born in 77. So I don't know about the 60s. It's actually something that Adam and I wanted to kind of talk about. So hopefully we'll get to it this weekend. We really wanted to kind of do a comparison because for me, it feels like shit is way crazier now than in the 60s. Like, were they having, did they have a city that had, I think Portland's had 100 straight nights of riots? Did they have riots in hundreds of cities simultaneously for days on end? How many people died? And, like again, right? So they're pointing this out, but how many people have been killed? I think it's like a couple dozen or something, maybe more than that. I'm not actually sure exactly what that is, but that, if I recall, that was the number. I feel like I saw the number in the 50s at some point, but I'm not actually sure about that. So anyway, you can always find somebody that has an allegiance to some organization you don't like, or adheres publicly to some ideology you don't like, or has the skin color that you don't like, or the religion that you don't like, etc., etc. You Out of 300 some million people in America, you will always be able to find an asshole of every color and creed, you know, everything. And this guy's a fucking maniac. I mean, what there I mean, what's the goal here, man? To just shoot a random cop? I mean, the guy was in L.A. There's two cops just got shot in a car. I mean, what good is that? At least, I mean, I am like 100% opposed to this, but at least if it was like a Black Lives Matter person, at least it's like the actual stated enemy. I really don't see that the Civil War that they're talking about, and I mean, and I'm in groups. I've seen, you remember this guy or this guy? When you told your friends you're ready for the Boogaloo, but you actually have one gun and a couple of mags with zero training, and now it's too late. Remember this dude? He got fucked up. He got killed. That I remember that. That was the beginning of the Boogaloo. Brian, I forget what his first name was. Here's another meme. Boogaloo, Biggie Glue, Big Glue Owl. Meme based insurgency. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is the kind of shit that I saw. Um, so, oh, don't I have a picture of this? Yeah. Yeah. So this is what, all right, what did they say he said? I became unreasonable and boog. You can't see my mouse. I would like that. I'll have to figure that out. So on the sort of front center, it would be kind of on the towards the right side of the hood, I guess. Stop the. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know. Hard. I don't know. I don't know what that says. And I so, at the top, it looks like this is where they're saying he wrote, I became unreasonable. Book. Maybe. Geez, I almost don't want to search this. Uh, yeah, it doesn't, zooming out doesn't help. I became unreasonable. Why you should be unreasonable. So, okay, so the top two news items, or the top two results, this is DuckDuckGo. Let's just go to Google because nobody uses DuckDuckGo. I became unreasonable. The first reference to it is this guy. Meme inspired by Emeyer has become a meme. So, sorry, I'm kind of just tracking this. Boogaloo and Killdozer. There are two words I would never expect to see in the same sentence, but Colorado's strangest rampage in the current climate of Black Lives Matter protests and violent fascist reactions to them have brought these words into the same virtual realm. I knew right from the day he destroyed my. Oh, this guy said it. The Killdozer guy. Oh, stop the duopoly. Okay, so that's what they think that says. Um, so it's literally all based around this Killdozer? Perhaps not coincidentally, the so called Boogaloo boys wear Hawaiian shirts as a sort of unofficial uniform identifier. Meyer wore a Hawaiian style print shirt when he conducted his rampage. Yeah, I I like how Boogaloo's as libertarian. So I guess I am in it, huh? 'Cause I'm a libertarian. I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Must be but used by Stop the Duopoly is a slogan frequently used by third party and libertarian candidates. You could just say third party candidates. I guess people would be too stupid to realize that that's also includes libertarian. Uh, well, anyway, we're not going into this topic today, okay? Um, so we have these 2020 Boogaloo killings, which is really crazy that This is what Wikipedia is calling it. I mean, do you think Wiki Antifa killings? Antifa killings of right. There's specific stuff. The shooting of Breonna Taylor. That's what comes up. Antifa member killed by police. Yeah. So this is now referred to as Boogaloo killings by Wikipedia. Nowhere have we seen this, but in Wikipedia now. That's what this guy Carrillo is labeled. His actions are called that. In late May, early June 2020, two ambush-style attacks occurred against security personnel and law enforcement officers. California attacks left 2 dead and 3 injured. So they had a drive-by shooting in front of a federal courthouse in Oakland, resulting in the death of security officer contracted with the Federal Protective Service. Over a week later, they still don't even say his name. Gravy. I saw it earlier, but he was arrested of second attack. Second suspect, Robert Justice, surrendered 5 days later. The FBI indicated that Carrillo was associated with the Boogaloo movement, a loosely organized American far-right extremist movement whose participants say they are preparing for a second civil war. Yeah, I also really bristle at the extremist. I'm definitely. I mean, libertarianism is by their definition. I mean, any third party is extremist. Your Green Party. I mean, anything that is not, but the way that they, the way they, the quality of being extreme, the advocacy of extreme measures or views, right? But that's completely subjective, right? So it's just whoever is the power, then if you don't agree with them having the power, you're an extremist. So, if there was a king and you didn't think a king should solely, have complete power, then you're an extremist. If you were anti-Nazi in the, late 30s, early 40s in Germany, you would be an extremist. It's just it's so silly. I think it's just it's so dismissive. But obviously, that's where the majority of people are, and the majority of people want to, anything that makes it easier for them to put down opposition, they'll do it. And that's an example. But yeah, I think it's like extremely simple-minded and dismissive. Whose participants say they're preparing for a. Oh yeah, I like doing this. Let's see what they use as references. So here's their reference. The Times. Blue boys prepare for next American Civil War in Hawaiian shirts. I mean, it's like, why is that the thing? Why is this the Hawaiian shirt the thing? Do they like obsess over Antifa, Black Bloc, which is an actual tactic? I mean, it's actually important to them. They're never not. If they are not wearing that, they're basically not Antifa. They're sure as hell not doing anything. That's like their method. It's so silly. Anyway, so here's a source, right? The Times. What is the Times? Registered in England. So this is so their first source is from England. A Boogaloo flag. I mean, it's so fucking ridiculous. Like, what? This is just bananas. It's like just absolute. It's just a troll. beliefs and structure. There's absolutely no structure. Far right, anti-government, and pro-gun. See, again, far right. That's not what a libertarian is. Even Wikipedia can't fucking get it right. Some groups have also been described as alt-right or libertarian and right libertarian. Okay, all right. Maybe I spoke too soon. Movement has also been described as a militia. The groups or individuals often self-identify as libertarian, although a few individuals have also described themselves as adherents of other ideologies, including anarcho-capitalism, minarchism, which is just basically libertarianism. So few apparent anarchists. Fucking anarcho-capitalists is an anarchist. Including some self-identified anarchists. Said that most Boogaloo members are libertarian anarchists who hate cops. Adherents use the term Boogaloo to refer to violent insurrection against the federal government or left-wing political opponents, often anticipated to follow government confiscation of firearms. Members of Boogaloo groups typically believe in acceleratism. Okay. Right. Well, what's this? This is just going to be a congressional hearing where somebody just says this, right? It's not real. Like, oh boy. Well, I'm sure this is long. Yeah, we can't do this. It's a whole hour. Anyway, it's just, congressional reports. No, wrong. Sorry, wrong thing. Oh no, I'm in the right place. According to The Economist, Boogaloo members have supported to this end spreading disinformation and conspiracy theories, attacks on infrastructure such as the New York's 311 line, and lone wolf terrorism. Lone wolf terrorism is probably the one thing I would say is probably what you actually would associate somebody wearing a Hawaiian shirt and doing something with. Oh, I don't even know what they're talking about. So somebody attacked this telephone system? Really good. Yeah, the Anti-Defamation League has identified the Boogaloo movement's contempt of law enforcement as the element that most strongly distinguishes them from other militia groups. Some Boogaloo groups are white supremacist or neo-Nazi and specifically believe that the Boogaloo will be a race war. They're also Boogaloo. Right, so it's fucking anything, right? It's just something that people that aren't on the left, that aren't communists, just kind of thought is funny and basically means, yeah, we think there could be another civil war. Look around. I mean, it doesn't feel like we're further, in 2020 from a Civil War II than we were, I don't know, a couple years ago. So, anyway, let's see. How the media deals with them.
Those Aloha shirts, they're not for a luau. Igloo masks, but packing heat.
Ready to go?
The leader of this group goes by the name Shifty. It's not his real name, but a nickname he gave himself. And Shifty is a self-proclaimed Boogaloo boy. Today, Shifty is meeting up with about a dozen other Boogaloo boys to attend this Black Lives Matter protest in Austin, Texas. serving, he says, as a sort of armed protection to keep protesters safe
Notice
from violence by the
music
police.
too, right?
This group is armed and ready with those assault rifles, and in their minds, they say they're guarding against what they describe as government intrusion. Boogaloos don't often speak to the media, but Shifty agreed to an interview with me via speakerphone just before the protest. So, what's with the Hawaiian shirts? Speaking of your kit.
We needed something to identify ourselves with.
I know you're not trying to seem menacing with the Hawaiian shirts and the igloo patches, but, you know, an AR-style rifle, for many people, is menacing.
People can feel how they want, but the Constitution protects our rights to do that. Everybody who does such in my group is trained and efficient with their weapons.
But Shifty and his fellow Boogaloos are not part of Black Lives Matter. They're part of a very different and much more secretive movement. They say they're anti-government, anti-establishment, pro-gun, pro-freedom. But their ideology is based on a notion of an impending Second American Civil War, which they call Civil War II Electric Boogaloo.
The phrase Boogaloo.
This dude is a total dope. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny that he is. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. They have an interview with him, and they are putting a lot of words in his mouth about being anti-government and all this stuff. The only thing I heard make reference to is that he thought that the Constitution protected his rights to, you know, carry the AR. That doesn't scream anti-government, but you know, we'll see. I mean, I think you can still be a libertarian and be a constitutionalist. You know, I think Ron Paul tried to toe that line. This dude's just fucking pointless. Look at him.
Is referencing an old movie from 1984 called Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. It was a breakdancing movie, had nothing to do with violence.
Now you might ask, what is a film about teens engaging in goofy break?
But right, like, again, just the language that they use, you know, has nothing to do with violence. I mean, is that like the way you would refer to the Civil War? It's just, oh, there was violence, you know. It was just violent, you know, violent people. I mean, it was a Civil War. It's very complex. A whole lot of shit happened. But, you know, they just want to make you frightened of this, you know. They want to make my friend cowering in Portland, you know, scared of somebody, you know, in that's wearing any sort of tactical gear with a Hawaiian shirt. You know, they want to just keep that fear going.
Dancing duels don't have anything to do with armed men, Hawaiian shirts, igloos, and
I mean, you have to be fucking retarded to not get this. I mean, it's literally been like a joke that has been beaten to death for 30 years. I mean, what the fuck? It doesn't have anything to do with it. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just a reference to part 2 of something. That's it. It was the greatest ever name of a sequel. Electric Boogaloo. That's what it is. They're just taking the name of the greatest sequel movie ever and applying it, and people have been doing it for fucking 30 years and applying it to all kinds of shit.
Call for a civil war. Well, not much, actually.
The first reference to the Boogaloo meaning a future civil war started really in the recesses of the internet a few years back, but it crossed over into more mainstream social media platforms back in June of 2018. And since then, it's caught steam.
The word Boogaloo is a throwback to Afro-Latino dance and music made popular in the 60s on shows like American Bandstand.
Who fucking cares? This is so
Despite the air of joviality, this movement that's co-opted its name has proven to be deadly serious.
They are an extremist group. Their rhetoric, their pedigree and everything is based on violence against peace officers and others.
Is it though? Is that really, you know, again, right? There is all the difference in the world between preparing for a civil war and trying to incite one. I would argue that Antifa has been much more active in attempting to incite the violence and just been straight up causing violence. I mean, are guys in Hawaiian shirts running around with ARs and setting buildings and shit on fire? I mean, there's not a lot of evidence of it. I'm not saying it's impossible or that it definitely hasn't happened. Maybe it has. Maybe there have been some cases where, I don't know, somebody, from the right or from some libertarian group, agitated. I'm not saying that like there's no way that happened, but or like literally set a building on fire or something. I don't know. But there is tons and tons of video documentation of Antifa people doing it. And they're actually groups that meet together and have all kinds of organization, despite them claiming the opposite. And this is, I don't know. Let's see. And notice too, I mean, we'll keep going with this, but I mean, they've had the actual Boogaloo guy say like two things, and everything else is just, I mean, essentially, what they're okay with is going on to 4chan, pulling anything off of that and saying 4chan like Paul, Pol, and saying, oh, that's the Boogaloo, this is what the Boogaloo wants, or this is what they're saying, this is their rhetoric. I mean, it's like a fucking website, man. It's a website, just filled with hate and vitriol. I mean, it's just pure. It's just all trolls.
In general, there are
peace officers and others that they disagree with.
In general, there are two broad camps of the Boogaloo. On the one hand, you've got white supremacists who view the Civil War through a racial lens. And then you've got the more popular anti-government extremist version of the Boogaloo.
Like, based on what? Like, where are you getting any of this? There's two camps? Like, from what, man? From what? Like, who? There's just no. There's literally no organization whatsoever to this. Are you just saying in general there are these two camps of people amongst hundreds or thousands of different camps of ideologies? Sure, those are two camps of people. Yes, there are people that think there's a race war coming, and wow, how crazy that maybe they're getting to be a little bit more nervous now, given the race-based rioting that's been going on in the United States for 3+ months now. And the other anti-government people, whatever. I mean, I don't know, a lot of my friends, I mean, they buy a lot of ammunition and stuff. I mean, anyway, I mean, again, it's just like none of this has anything to do with this Boogaloo thing. Like, none of these ideas are new. It's just some of them there's some memes. It's like, I wish I could think of a good example of this. So this is going to be pretty random. I just on the spot, I don't know if I can do anything better than this. So the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2018, but the season of 2017 going into 2018. So during that year, they suffered a ton of injuries. They lost their starting quarterback, who was like going to be MVP of the year of the league that year, which is, if you know anything about football, that's a monstrous loss, the most important person on the team, and a lot of other key, really bad injuries. And they miraculously held it together, got into the playoffs as the top seed in their conference. So they actually still managed to hold on to the best record, even though they had lost all these people. But they were underdogs in every single game. So they, in the 3 playoff games, including the Super Bowl, they were underdogs. So one of the players started wearing a dog mask. The next game, bunch of fans had dog masks. Everybody at the Super Bowl, lots of people had dog masks on. This is not like, this to me is what the Boogaloo movement is. There's nothing new in it. It's just like the Eagles fans during their Super Bowl year, 2017, 2018, wearing dog masks because they were underdogs. There wasn't a new ideology. They weren't recruiting new fans with it. It's just like a meme that they turned into, the way they dress. I mean, what if Antifa just started doing red block and just wearing all red? But I mean, it was Antifa members wearing all red. It doesn't change anything. I mean, that's my point. My point is not that we're denying the existence of militias, the existence of libertarian, militia members or right-wing militia members. I'll give you that probably 95% of all militia members are either, right-wing or libertarian-leaning folks. I think there's very few Democrats and communists that are, joining American militias or creating them, So, I'll give you all that. My whole point is that that has been around for a long time. And nothing's ever really happened, I mean, I'm not saying that like nobody's ever committed heinous acts. Like maybe you're gonna say the Oklahoma City bombing is done by, this type of ideology. Sure, and we've also had 100 days of rioting in, in Portland this year by communist ideology. So. What's more, anyway, it's again, I mean, it's antithetical to the NAP to go out and commit violence. So you'll see later, Antifa supports, like they look at violence as a tactic. And you'll notice that the news media, when they're interviewing him, they say that, I mean, they're pretty much on board. Like, they don't, bristle. Whereas this guy says 2 things, nothing inflammatory whatsoever. You seem kind of happy, Like, they keep saying, oh, despite their jovial appearance. It's like, yeah, okay. Just give me any piece of evidence to support what you're saying, But, so the point is the Boogaloo Boys are just people that already are in militias and stuff, wearing Hawaiian shirts. And I really don't think that it's anything different than that. People have been worrying about the Civil War, a second Civil War, for a long time. And people have been worrying about a race war for a long time. So.
Some members have been accused of using the protest to act on Boogaloo's violent promise of inciting discord. In the last 3 months, several alleged members across the country have been charged.
Okay. So Boogaloo's violent promise of inciting discord. Where do you get that, right? Again, you're just making it up. You're just saying it. You're not citing anything. They're showing this, right? Who did this? The fucking Antifa, Black Lives Matter rioters. Right? 100%, right?
With crimes. In Las Vegas, federal authorities say 3 alleged Boogaloo members were found possessing Molotov cocktails. They were arrested. They have since been charged with federal and state crimes, including a conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism. All 3 men have pled not guilty.
Again, could these be part of right-wing militia groups or libertarian, militia groups or whatever? Sure. Again, saying they're part of this new thing is BS. It's just to fucking scare people on the left, to make them more angry and fill them with more hate and fear. Duncan Kraft, right on the money, brother.
And in Oakland, authorities say Air Force Sergeant Stephen Carrillo, a self-avowed Boogaloo member who had posted about the movement online, and Robert Justice Jr. drove this white van to the federal courthouse there, then shot and killed federal officer Patrick Underwood.
They came to Oakland to kill cops.
A week later, a witness spotted that van 70 miles away near Santa Cruz, California.
The witness observed what appeared to be ammunition, firearms, and bomb-making equipment in the van.
Sheriff's deputies followed the van back to Carrillo's home. There, authorities say he ambushed officers, firing on them and throwing explosives. Another officer, Santa Cruz Sheriff Sergeant Damon Gutzweiler, was killed. 2 other officers were wounded. Carrillo went on the run in a white sedan, hitting yet another officer.
Somebody please come help!
Finally, a Good Samaritan tackles him, and police find what they say was a ghost gun, a homemade AR-style rifle he'd allegedly used, and as he was led away, Carrillo yells,
This is what I came to fight. I'm sick of these
So, I mean, this dude's a fucking moron, right? This is what I came to fight. I'm sick of these fucking police. I mean, bro, you're a fucking murderer, man. Like, what are you shooting that dude? What fucking good did that do? I bet he had a family. He's just murdered him, you know? I mean, this guy's a fucking idiot, you know? Like, what are you gonna do? So interesting that they claim he had this ghost gun. I wonder if back to this under ghost. Yeah. So, I mean, they may just according to the official bureau of the ATF, a homemade machine gun with a silencer was used in the shootings. The weapon was a ghost gun, did not have a serial number. Pretty interesting there. Pretty interesting. So, I don't know. I mean, they say homemade, so I don't think it's just that he's, got rid of the serial number. But I don't know if it was 3D printed or what. But, that's... I think we talked about it in a much earlier episode in the podcast about 3D printing guns and stuff like that. And, the idea, not going to come up with his name off the top of my head, but the guy, I think his channel was Ghost Gunner or something. But, his point that basically, like, he doesn't even care about Second Amendment activism anymore. He's just like, it's over. This 3D printing thing is happening. They're just going to be, it's not going to be very long before it's like pretty easy for anybody to just print whatever gun they want, with a 3D printer in their house. They don't have to go anywhere, that's that's the point that the sort of technology is just going to basically defeat the gun grabbers. So anyway, just interesting that he had this homemade gun.
Authorities say Carrillo scrawled Boog in blood on one of the vehicles he stole, and in his van, a bulletproof vest with a patch that tied him to the Boogaloo movement.
So there, that, yeah. So weird. Yeah, you just have these fucking loons.
Carrillo and Justice have been indicted and face charges of murder and attempted murder. Both have pled not guilty.
He was a lone wolf, and we do not condone violence or his actions. They were disgusting. He was not doing that in the defense of anybody's individual liberty.
Do you think it's a problem for the Boogaloo that people identify them with Stephen Carrillo's alleged attack on police?
Yes, it has. It has been harmful to some things with us, yes.
So you've actually turned people away who've been advocating violence?
Absolutely.
We take the streets! Who are we? We take the streets!
But these Boogaloos claim they are non-violent and they become a self-involved fixture in protests across the country. Never formally invited, but making their presence known.
One of the methods of recruiting is joining these protests and putting on a positive face that they are joining the people.
This is another Boogaloo member who wants to be called Trashman. He says he works construction in North Carolina by day. By night, he helps run one of the largest Boogaloo groups on Facebook.
I first became involved in it, or I guess more aware of it, through social media, through Facebook.
Trashman isn't carrying a gun because he says he's a non-violent Boogaloo.
What brought me into this ideology?
That's what this guy was talking about. Doesn't carry a gun, has PMags in his plate carrier. So weird. Like, what? Like, it's just total nonsense.
Was the inclusion of others. It's not relegated to a certain class of people or a color of people or religion.
Sounds pretty middle of the road, but despite their claims of nonviolence, Homeland Security and the Department of Justice have labeled them as a violent extremist group.
The biggest misconception of the Boogaloo movement is that we're racist terrorists or extremists of any kind.
Facebook and the private messaging service Discord recently categorized the Boogaloos as extremists and purged their groups from the platforms.
Beginning of July, we were shut down on Facebook, my personal profile, as well as, from what I understand, hundreds, if not thousands of others were permanently deactivated on Facebook. It was a smack in the face, for sure.
All they did is fracture us into 1,000 more harder to find pieces, so it didn't slow us down one bit.
Even with the burgeoning attention, the Boogaloos remain very cloak and dagger. But Shifty feels they need to capitalize on the wave of unrest sweeping the country.
Why is it important for you to do this interview, Shifty?
Too many times we do not get a sit down in a relaxed environment to really express our views and really get the word out for what we're standing for, you know, in face, and let people know that this isn't just some internet meme or Facebook group with a bunch of guys sitting in their mother's basements typing on keyboards. This is a real thing.
While some, like Shift...
So he would disagree with me, but I still hold to my my opinion here that, again, what's different? What is different? It's just groups of, it's like a way to say, hey, you know, now I'm on this team. I'm on the libertarian team that wears Hawaiian shirts. But I mean, is there any differentiating, you know, philosophy in there? Anything different? The ideology? This guy said it doesn't matter what race or religion you are. Yeah, it doesn't matter fucking libertarianism. Like, none of this. It's just, and again, right? Like, another tactic they use is as if this guy, even Shifty, like, who the fuck is Shifty? You know? Is he, I mean, do you believe, God, I should do, now that I can do these with the screen share and stuff, I should do some more about the absurd shit that they've caught, like CNN, just completely staging things, you know, and I mean, this, I don't know, you know, I mean, I've been a libertarian for a long time, and I got a lot of friends who are, you know, gun people. I mean, I have guns. I am certainly no, you know, I don't consider myself like a gun guy or anything. I'm, you know, would like to be more, I would be more of a prepper if I wasn't, you know, just had other things to do or whatever. But sure, do I wish I had, you know, a 2-year supply of food that would last 30 years and, you know, 10,000 rounds. Yeah. I mean, there's I would like to have all that stuff. I have some stuff, you know, but not all, you know, not all that. But you know, like, I just don't really know, like, what's the difference between them and other militia members that are also going out and doing the same thing, you know.
Shifty and Trashman say they toe the nonviolent line. They stand at the ready. The reality of the Boogaloo's anti-government ethos is always present.
So how far are you willing to go, even, let's say, at a protest like a BLM protest?
There's always the phrase, live to fight another day, but everybody who in our group is prepared to give the ultimate sacrifice in defense of liberty.
Our only recourse at this point is to be louder than everybody else. We need to make our voices very clear and very loud to both unify us and distance ourselves from those that would cause harm to people or present us in a bad light.
I think their ideology and everything tells you exactly what they're here for. Are they here to stay? I think time is going to tell. These groups don't go away. They may morph, change their name, change their style, change their membership, but the ideologies usually don't change.
For Nightline, I'm Matt Gutman in Los Angeles.
So right. So again, so they even had this other guy, and nothing they said about, you know, them being extremists, them being racist or whatever, you know, all that shit. That dude was just saying, you know, they're, you know, what does he say again?
What they're here for.
In a bad light.
I think their ideology and everything tells you exactly what they're here for.
So their ideology and everything. So I guess they're here to protect liberty. So that's cool. So this was from August.
Welcome back to The Lead, the national lead now. By most accounts, almost all of the people protesting against the hateful bigots, the Nazis and Klansmen in Charlottesville, were peaceful, but not all of them. In their midst was a sometimes very violent group of protesters that call themselves Antifa, known to not only clash with bigots, but also sometimes with police and occasionally storefronts. At least 2 journalists in Virginia were assaulted by violent counter-protesters over the weekend, including this cameraman from the Richmond CBS affiliate. CNN's Sarah Ganim now takes us inside Antifa and shows us this group like you've never seen it before.
Yeah.
It's 6 a.m. in Portland, Oregon, and we're headed to a bar with blacked out windows.
They wanted to meet us really early in the morning because they're concerned about a lot of people being around.
We are meeting members of the Rose City Antifa, short for anti-fascist. This group's main goal is to disrupt neo-Nazis and white supremacists, but also take on government and capitalism.
Antifa is any group that's willing to stand up against fascists by any means necessary.
Right. So this is sort of what I was referring to. So again, there's sort of the descriptions of them, but you know, I mean, I know a lot. I know in particular, Rose City Antifa. I've been following them for a while. They are fucking retarded, man. It's so, like, you talk about an echo chamber. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Anyway, it's so funny. I literally, I would see like videos of them, of like Antifa, you know, in Portland, like smashing window, you know, doing whatever, and then in in the Rose City group, like them just talking about how they're getting portrayed in this way or whatever. It's like fucking ridiculous.
By any means necessary, they say, can mean outing a white nationalist at their work or to their neighbors. Or, as we've seen recently, violence, fires, property damage, hand-to-hand combat at protests across the country.
Explain to me the reasoning behind fighting.
You have to make it so unpalatable to be doing white supremacist organizing that they no longer want to do that. And historically, that's what's worked. You have to put your body in the way, and you have to make it speak in a language that they understand, and sometimes that is violence.
There's no firm number on how many Antifa activists there are.
Right, so just straight up, right? The way, like, look at the fucking, how like nicely they deal, and I'm not the guy that was, talking to the Shifty wasn't being an asshole or anything either. But the whole thing with the Boogaloo part thing is about how they're violent extremists, they're racist, they're trying to start a civil war. But the actual words that the two supposed Boogaloo, self-proclaimed Boogaloo leaders said, none of that, not one iota of that. They, talking about protecting liberty, that, that's their main goal, whatever. These motherfuckers straight up are explaining why they think it's okay for them to be violent. So as they think that you are a fascist or you're a white supremacist, and remember what's been happening with the definition of white supremacists over the last several years. It's just grown to expand anybody, right? Like it's essentially, if you're not anti-racist, I mean, you're a white supremacist, It's I saw a friend of mine share. I mean, she's just a useful idiot, whatever. I mean, she's not Antifa, but she definitely spits out the same fucking bullshit propaganda. Something like using yellow emojis. It's like, white people using yellow emojis is like actually a white supremacist because it's saying that, you think that you are the default. How fucking bananas is that, right? That just using the default settings of your phone makes you a white supremacist. Anyway, but, I mean, there it is, right? I mean, this is about as real. So the difference, right, another big difference between this and that is Rose City Antifa. Like, I actually know what that is. I know it, you know what I mean? Like, I've been following them for years. Like, that's like a real thing that exists. Who the fuck is Shifty? I mean, it's just nothing. Like, memes can blow up and overnight have hundreds of millions of people, seeing them, talking about them, sharing, tens of millions. I don't know what's a reasonable amount, and then they like go away or whatever. And if maybe militias start to adopt this, as like, I mean, to me, if you really look at it, it's a mix. I mean, the Boogaloo is just whatever. It's just, that's what Civil War II is. That's what part 2 of anything is. It's the Boogaloo. It's the electric Boogaloo. Maybe this would be like the lead Boogaloo, but it doesn't sound as cool. But it's basically just saying it's the second Civil War, and they're just saying the Killdozer dude is like, they like him. They look up to him. I mean, again, I'm not saying I do. I honestly, I've never even really read a whole lot about him. It's just some dude that got super pissed off and drove. And I think he just destroyed a bunch of property. I don't even think he killed anybody. So it's not, I mean, it's nothing like, Oklahoma City or whatever. But anyway, let's keep on. But so they... Like, they don't even deny, and in fact, they explain why, it should be okay. I mean, here you have it. Rose City Antifa, like my fucking stupid-ass friend on Facebook sharing this shit today, talking about, this is for everybody desperately trying to claim that Antifa is doing violence. It's like, here's your fucking chapter. This is Rose City Antifa is Portland Antifa. I mean, this is why I'm on them. This is why I follow them. Because they're like the main or the most popular, and here's them in their own words explaining how they use violence. So unless this is another completely set up thing, which would make sense because CNN is pro Antifa. I mean, what's the difference between the Shifty and this person? Is Shifty is avowed nonviolent, and this person is violent. They will use violence to get what they want, and Shifty will defend himself. Offensive violence, aggression, right? These fucking Rose City Antifa, their ideology violates the NAP. I mean, obviously communism does, but then it's like in specific, they will go out and just directly do violence. I mean, it's not just that they are adherent. Like, I don't think that, anybody that believes in Marxism, whatever, is a, a violent person. They may just be, by my estimation, ignorant or, misunderstanding of things. But, they're specifically talking about doing violent acts in present time,
There are in the U.S. because there isn't any one organization. Most are local groups that recruit and communicate through social media. But experts who track these organizations say their membership.
Like, who doesn't fucking communicate through social media? I mean, maybe 3 years ago. Like, it's just so I can't stand it. I can't believe how, like, are you a person that actually watches ABC News or CNN every day and watches their investigative reports? Like, how can you do this without your brain just melting and sliding out of your ears? It's so bad. I mean, they have been using this same exact cadence and packaging and method since I've been alive to do these investigative pieces. It's so fucking stupid. It's so bad.
Is growing in response to the rise of white national groups and the election of President Donald Trump. Violence and property destruction led to more than 200.
Let's go back.
One organization. Most are local groups that recruit and communicate through social media. But experts who track these organizations say their membership is growing in response to the rise of white national groups and the election of President Donald Trump. Violence and property destruction led to more than 200 arrests in Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day. Prosecutors say
Inauguration Day, they just doing violence, smashing windows, going fucking crazy.
They were wearing masks covered head to toe in black, a tactic the Antifa call black bloc.
People dress in black bloc for a few things. One,
Scott Crow has been leading anarchist and militant leftist groups for decades.
so people put on the masks so that we can all become anonymous. And then therefore we are able to move more freely and do what we need to do, whether it is illegal or not.
So some people will push back on that and say that the black bloc is to keep people from being identified and arrested when they break the law.
Literally what he said, which he just sort of laughs and is like, yeah, it's literally what he just said.
They commit crime.
Damn right. It's a good way to avoid the ramifications of law enforcement.
We saw that firsthand at a May Day protest in New York City.
We cover our face because the Nazis will try to find out who we are.
So, again, right, the Nazis. Listen to what this dude's saying. Like, I mean, you telling me, like, this is so, like, untethered from reality where this fucking dude goes.
We cover our face because the Nazis will try to find out who we are. And that is a very bad thing because they harass people. When they organize, they kill people, they hurt people, they fight people. And we're the ones who are fighting back. They are the second coming of Hitler.
Police and
like, what? Who is they? Like, what? Where? You know, there's still now, right? This was back when, so 2017 was Charlottesville, was in 2017. So this was like a hotter topic, right? This is when they were really trying to talk about the rise of white supremacists, right? Like as if that they were, and the one Charlottesville thing that broke out into violence, and they'll still bring that up, right? What that Charlottesville event is like, what, maybe 1% of the damage and violence compared to what Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters or rioters have been doing this summer. I mean, and yet they will still bring it up again as if it's, pretty similar. And, you could say, part of me feels like, hey, people are prone to violence, and you know, it's one of the things I see, you know, I think is really silly with Democrats and Republicans. Like, they really try to ascribe some real, you know, level of intelligence or moral virtue to being on one side or the other, you know. But the reality is, you're basically all sheep, and you're not on whatever side you're on out of some, you know, great intellect that you have, or, you know, some real strong moral compass. You're probably the same as whatever you're around. You know, that's what most Democrats and Republicans are. They're not different from the majority of people that they're around. And, you know, so I always think that it's sort of, it's just so funny to see in comments and stuff, this sort of back and forth mudslinging, like, oh, typical Trump supporter, or typical libtard Democrat, you know, whatever. And you know, as if, you know, one side is sort of dumber than the other. And I believe that there's even been some studies about that shows that, you know, there really isn't much of a difference. And actually, the libertarians are the only ones that actually show, on average, to have higher IQ. But I would say, you know, that inherent in a communist ideology is what we would describe as violence. You know, they inherently, like, want to seize property as part of. I mean, maybe, you know, maybe there's some way to be a communist where, you know, that you, because I think the idea was Marx was sort of predicting that this is just the way it would go. But even if it's just a prediction, I mean, at some point, the humans have to take action, and one group seizes all the property and the control of it, and then starts to divvy it out. And, you know, that is violence, and that's at the core of being a communist. That, you know, from my perspective, like how they would call, you know, me a fascist or white supremacist or something because, you know, I believe in the virtue of free market capitalism. You know, I would say that you know, their ideology is fundamentally rooted in violence, and so it is not at all surprising to me that the group whose whole premise is built upon seizing, you know, the means of production and all of, you know, the property and whatever, and all the power by any means necessary, is the group that's doing the lion's share of destroying property and doing violence to people. You know, I mean, this is what you do. Like, you know, you put out, I mean, this is like literally what, I mean, it's just what any propagandist does, you know. And I don't know if they buy it in North Korea, but, you know, they sure as hell propagandize the shit out of those people. And they believe that the United States is just this terrible, awful place and blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, you can do it. You can do it to anybody. You get people, if people buy your bullshit, you know, you can get them to do some pretty heinous things. And, you know, this is the way that Antifa sort of spins this stuff. Like I said, I mean, crazy echo chamber shit. I mean, they're worse than flat earthers, almost. Probably not that ridiculous. But I would say the most absurd people I've ever seen online, interacted with online, is probably the flat earthers. And the second worst would be Rose City Antifa. I mean, yeah, it seemed like, you know, it's like a requirement that you had to huff glue regularly for a couple of years to become part of it or something.
And Berkeley told us they haven't seen this kind of destruction since the 1960s. Law enforcement in other cities are dealing with similar situations. like in Portland, Oregon, where Antifa have been involved in at least 10 protests ending in violence, according to police.
Well, tack another 100 onto that.
And it's wearing on the community.
It is new. It's like this rumble mentality of, I'm going to bring my friends, you bring your friends, and we're going to fight it out in the park. It's not something we've seen here. It's not good for the city. People are just frustrated by it. It's affecting their livability. It's affecting their business.
Has it become more violent?
Do you imagine what it must be like to be there right now if you're not like part of this? You just, I mean, I have a friend of mine another friend of mine that lives there, definitely Republican, or I mean, I don't know, but at least he used to be, but you know, pretty good, just Christian conservative dude with his wife and kids, and so he's a scientist, you know, he lives, you know, out on a suburb of Portland, but he lives there. I mean, that's gotta be rough.
Violence.
It happens quicker. The fire starting that we saw on May Day is something we haven't really seen much of in the past. The running through the street, breaking windows and everything in sight. We haven't seen it as consistently as we've seen it in the last 8 months.
But it's the violence that's gotten them attention, directly confronting groups that preach white nationalist rhetoric, like on Inauguration Day when white nationalist Richard Spencer was punched in the face.
It's so funny. I mean, remember, it's just like, it's just not, it's so funny that this is how they tried to sell Antifa to us, that they were opposed to white nationalism or whatever. This is such a joke.
And it was the Antifa movement that caused Berkeley to cancel speeches by extreme...
I mean, what the fuck does this running down the street and smashing windows and shit have to do with confronting? It's like, it doesn't even make sense inside of this. And now they're going to go attack this Milo Yiannopoulos.
Right provocateurs like Milo Yiannopoulos.
Provocateur.
If there are the more hardcore elements, the white supremacists and neo-Nazis that go to these rallies that are itching for a fight, we're there to say, we'll stand in your way.
Right, are they, but see, what a fucking lying bitch, man. They're itching for a fight. So they're going, all right, well, let me just make sure I'm hearing this right.
For a fight, we're there, the white supremacists and neo-Nazis. If there are the more hardcore elements, the white supremacists and neo-Nazis that go to these rallies that are itching for a fight, we're there to say, we'll stand in your way.
How could they get in a fight if you just weren't there? Like, just like the mental gymnastics. Again, like, compare this to Shifty, right? Shifty it's pretty simple shit, just saying, you know, pretty much libertarian style stuff, you know, whatever. Just pretty straightforward, no mental gymnastics. But the mental gymnastics, you need to go. Like, it's like they're trained to say sentences that almost sound like they make sense until you try to parse them and says, so these rallies, which is like, okay, let's just say there's a white supremacist rally, and the people going to the rally, she's referring to these white supremacists, the particular ones that are itching for a fight. But they're going to their own rally, right? Like, they're going to something, you know, in Charlottesville, it was the statues, taking down the statues or whatever. We'll stand in front of you and get in your way. Like it's just fucking nonsense. Like, you're going to fight. Like, that's what you're doing. Like, this, you know, you guys are showing up to what you call white supremacist rallies and starting a fight. Like, your Antifa, this Rose City Antifa chick, is the one itching for a fight, right? Like, she's the one going there. Whoops.
I've talked to say that the Antifa violence may...
The more hardcore elements.
Provocateurs like Milo Yiannopoulos.
If there are the more hardcore elements, the white supremacists and neo-Nazis that go to these rallies that are itching for a fight, we're there to say, we'll stand in your way.
stand in your way. Like, what a fucking nonsense thing to say. Fucking idiot, man.
The thing is, Jake, that experts who I've talked to say that the Antifa violence may end up actually hurting their cause. Across the country, people who are dressing in black bloc are getting arrested. Authorities are taking this seriously, but that's not stopping them at all. They have been telling me that they believe that this tactic is working. Now, one of the interesting things that I found in doing this reporting, what's really surprised me, is that we found that a lot of these new Antifa members, they're young people, disenfranchised young people who felt that they were let down by both parties after the election, and this is where they ended up. Jake?
Wow, that is really surprising. What an amazing report. Anyway, so as you can see, it's total bullshit everywhere you look. One thing I thought was interesting, Scott Horton had this guy on here, Ford Fisher. So Ford Fisher was talking about, he does some reporting, and he does not come out and identify himself politically at all. But he talked about recently, like he was just talking about just how ridiculous the major media coverage of all this stuff had been. And so he actually had been covering a lot of stuff, riots and stuff for years now. I think maybe even starting with the Ferguson stuff or something. But he was talking about, in particular, this Boogaloo thing and the Black Lives Matter and all this stuff. And he was just like, well, I covered this, rally where they had it together. And the way he said the cover, and I actually forgot to track this part down, but the way that it was shown on the news, like ABC or whatever, I think they described it as a Boogaloo thing or something. And then they said, and there were some counter protesters there, and they showed Black Lives Matter or something. And he said, even in that shot, if you just looked at that shot, there was Black Lives Matter guy with his fists in the air, and there were some of the militia people there with their fists in the air, like in solidarity together. Like, it couldn't even get a shot. But he's just like, I don't know, maybe they just literally didn't understand what was going on. But he said it sure seems like they consciously are trying to deceive the world, or and people in the United States, that these two groups are fundamentally at odds, when here's a pretty good example that they're not. So this is from that.
Black guns really do matter.
Yeah.
With that being said,
it's a small beating.
Talking about self-preservation, it is the law of nature to protect yourself and defend yourself against all oncoming enemies. Everything in nature has a defense mechanism. A turtle retracts its extremities into its shell to defend itself. A porcupine releases needles and plunges into the skins of any.
A little while.
Your gun rights defended.
I'll just go to where it cuts over. It just sort of
peace and
cuts
power
over.
And Black power.
Oh, baby. If you want to have your gun rights defended,
I don't really know this dude.
If you want to have an end to police brutality, because people have more guns, and by the way, also ending qualified immunity, which holds the police accountable when they do brutalize everyone. Yeah. If you want that, you have three choices. You have Donald Trump, who's one of the biggest cheerleaders for the police state, and who occasionally talks a good game when it comes to gun control, when he's not busy pushing for bump stock bans and gun accessory bans and red flag laws. And then you have Joe Biden, who doesn't even try to talk a good game about guns. He is proposing massive gun control when he's not pushing for continuation of his 50-year history of the militarized police state and civil asset forfeiture and a completely out of control, increasingly unaccountable police state. Again, when he's not, you took my line, when he's not busy sniffing children, and his newly minted running mate, who, again, you took my line, locked up more black people than almost any other person living right now.
Yeah, she sure did.
And then the next choice that you have is Joe Jorgensen, who is going to end the war on guns, and who's also going to end the war.
Let's just look real quick. I don't know. I've seen picture of him before. Right. Yeah. That's that Spike Cohen, isn't it? So there you go. There's a feather in the cap for Spike Cohen.
On drugs and end qualified immunity and end civil asset forfeiture and end no knock raids and end cash bail and end minimum mandatory minimum sentencing and dismantle the policies of systemic racism that have led to the harmful and inequitable and abusive outcomes that we often see. And that starts with allowing you to defend yourself by ending the war on guns. So I hope everyone here recognizes that they only have one viable choice when it comes to demonstrating, truly demonstrating that Black Lives Matter, and that is Joe Jorgensen. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
These definitely are.
Republicans and Democrats have so little between them, so little difference between them, that they have to create theater, and they have to keep everyone nice and separated and fighting each other so that we don't take a step back and say, well, wait a second, they're all working together.
I thought I was showing you a video of a Boogaloo and Black Lives Matter, but really this is, wow. I mean, this guy really, and I don't really see what he says. Who's this guy?
Black guy, he's a militant. No, we're freaking Americans. You need to exercise your right to carry every day. Because if you don't exercise your right, that right's going to be taken. Fox News, they more so represent the Republicans, so they're going to put everything in the Republican positive light. CNN, they more so stand for Democrats, so they're going to put everything in that light. There is no party standing for the libertarians, at least trying to give them a voice, even though they're out here putting in work as well, and they have policies, and they're fighting to make sure things happen too. Let's end all the party lines. Because to me, when I think party, I think of a good time. I don't know about y'all, but what is there to celebrate when lives are being taken? What is there to celebrate when we don't have equality? What is there to celebrate when people are dying daily for all these different things? There's nothing to celebrate. This ain't no damn party. These are lives at stake. We need to know.
All right, so there you have it. This whole Boogaloo thing is mostly BS. You know, you see that their investigative reports are literally 2 lines from, you know, a couple different guys and then a bunch of other people putting a bunch of words in their mouth. But those 2 guys, again, right? You know, it's like the dog whistle shit. Oh, you know, this is a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle. It's like, yo, if these fucking if white supremacy is so on the rise, why do they have to dog whistle? Why can't they just be racist and just be out? Because it's actually not on the rise at all. There's never been a time in my life where it has been more uncomfortable to be openly racist than it is right now. I mean, by far, you know, by far. The political correctness has just grown and grown and grown and grown. And I mean, and I think it continues to grow by people just being backed into some fearful corner by, you know, the news is making up these boogeymen. So, anyway. What's the one I like? This one's the best. So, you know, that's what it is. meme-based insurgency. We got to get on board. Get your shirts. Get your tactical gear. Smoke them if you got them. Yeah, anyway, I don't know if I have much more to say about all this. It's pretty long anyway. It's quite long, about an hour and over an hour and a half. But I'm glad I got back to do this. Hey man, what the fuck do you even do, right? I don't know. I mean, I think the Boogaloo thing is fucking stupid, Just stick to the principles, learn the principles. I mean, that's the most important thing to me. I really don't know what it is. What else? I don't, I don't have hope and I don't know of a strategy at all. But I feel like there is, some flame that we are keeping alive, and it will not stay alive if you don't get the principles, that I don't know, Mises and Rothbard and Eilert Hake and a bunch of other, just like libertarian thinkers, philosophers, economists before us have laid down. And I really think that that's the most important thing, because when you get that down, you can see through a lot, and you can see. I think that it helps you see through, this just like confusing fog of words that Antifa people use when speaking clearly about doing violence as a tactic, but somehow making it seem as if the other side is at fault, Anyway, so, fuck Rose City Antifa. They suck so bad. And keep your head on a swivel, because Boogaloo could happen.